He never saw the stage lights again, never saw the mirrored walls of the studio, or the way people stared as he passed by with a cane in one hand and a leash in the other. They saw a blind man, and they assumed the story ended there. A quiet life, a careful path, a dog that did the seeing. But they didn't know what happened when the door closed, when the music began, when he whispered, "You ready, girl?" That's when the dancer woke up, not the one they remembered, the one they'd applauded in theaters, reviewed in magazines, but someone softer, wiser, still broken in places, but dancing anyway. Because this time he didn't dance alone. He moved with a partner who couldn't speak, but who listened better than anyone ever had. A guide dog named Dancer, who didn't just follow him, she felt him, and in teaching her to move, he found something he never expected. He wasn't leading, he was being led, back to life, back to joy, back to himself. The question is, how far can you go when you stop pretending to see the way and start trusting who walks beside you? His name was Adrian Banks. In another life, he was movement incarnate. The stage was his second skin. Velvet beneath his feet, sweat tracing stories down his spine. He didn't just dance, he told truths with his body. Audiences felt him before they understood him. A pirouette could say what words never could. And when the spotlight found him mid-leap, he looked watless, fearless, free. But that was before the diagnosis, before the days of blurred letters and dimmed streetlights, before the doctor's words turned heavy. Progressive retinal degeneration, incurable, inevitable. At first he tried to fight it, pushed through rehearsals, missed steps he never used to miss, lied to choreographers, said it was exhaustion, fatigue, stage nerves. But deep down, he knew he was dancing on borrowed time. Then came the fall, a misjudged edge of the stage, a twisted ankle, a gasp from the audience. And when he limped off, he never went back on. No farewell performance, no final bow, just darkness. The kind that sinks in slowly until it surrounds you. He moved back into his childhood apartment. The mirrors came down. The dance shoes were boxed and buried in a closet he stopped opening. Friends faded, calls stopped. The silence became its own kind of choreography, a cruel routine of isolation. And then came Dancer, a Labrador with soft eyes and a steady gait, assigned to him not because of who he'd been, but because of who he was now. She wasn't just a guide dog. She was a tether to the world, to independence, to the small daily acts of courage. Crossing a street, pouring tea, finding the edge of a bed without bruising your shin. But what Marley didn't know, what no one could have guessed, was that in her he'd find the rhythm again. Not the old rhythm, not the standing ovations or spotlight arcs. Something gentler, something quieter, but no less powerful. And all of it started with a song he didn't mean to play. Adrian Banks had always thought strength came from control. Every step, every routine, calculated, he had to. After losing his sight at 19, chaos lurked behind every corner, tripping on a curb, missing a handrail, trusting people who meant well but didn't understand. So when he got Marley his first guide dog, it wasn't love at first walk. It was awkward, unsteady, unnerving. Adrian kept giving commands, and Marley kept hesitating, because Marley wasn't trained to follow barked orders. He was trained to lead. One rainy afternoon, it all came undone. Adrian insisted on taking the long route to the music hall, a path he thought was safe, but construction had rerouted the sidewalk, And suddenly, Marley stopped, refused to move. Adrian tugged the harness, frustrated, and Marley gently pulled him in the other direction. That's when Adrian heard it, the clatter of scaffolding falling just ahead, metal crashing, people shouting, and Marley had known. He sank to his knees in the rain, hand on Marley's head, heart racing, and for the first time, he whispered instead of commanded, "Okay, I trust you." It wasn't a breakdown, it was a breakthrough. In that moment, Adrian didn't just realize Marley could lead him through the world. He realized Marley might lead him back to something he'd lost entirely: rhythm, joy, and maybe even the dance. After that stormy afternoon, something shifted. Adrian no longer treated Marley like a GPS. He began to listen, to feel, to move with Marley, not ahead of him. Each morning, they practiced in the same quiet courtyard. Adrian walked in rhythm with Marley's steps, his shoulders looser, his grip gentler. At first, it looked like careful walking, but soon it started to resemble something else: a sway, a pivot, a turn, the kind of movement you don't learn, you remember. Adrian had danced once, ballroom back in high school. He used to call it his secret freedom, but after losing his sight, he locked that part of himself away, convinced it was over, convinced dancing required sight, until Marley proved otherwise. One afternoon, a violinist was busking in the park. Adrian paused. The music filled the air, and Marley leaned into him, shifting weight slightly. Adrian stepped with him, then again and again. A slow, steady motion emerged. It wasn't polished, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. A guide dog was never meant to be a dance partner. But Marley moved with such grace, such intuition, that Adrian couldn't help but follow. Soon people stopped to watch, not because it was flashy, but because it was fluid, alive, connected. He wasn't being pulled anymore. He was dancing. Adrian started choreographing short routines. Nothing formal, just movements rooted in trust. He began sharing clips online, not for fame, but to show what could happen when you let go of fear and let something or someone else lead. And every time they moved in sync, Adrian felt a new kind of power rise in him. Not control, but connection. He had found rhythm again, and it had nothing to do with sight. It had everything to do with surrender. For every moment of grace, there was also grit, because dancing blind, even with Marley, wasn't just poetic, it was hard. Some days, Adrian couldn't find the rhythm. Other days, Marley hesitated, distracted, tired, or uncertain. And the online attention, it brought praise, but also doubt. Is this safe for the dog? Is he exploiting his blindness? Just a TikTok trick. One comment stung more than the rest. You're just pretending to be free. That one hit deep, because sometimes Adrian wondered the same. Late one evening, while practicing near the waterfront, a siren blared unexpectedly. Marley flinched. Adrian turned too fast, lost his footing, and hit the pavement. The fall wasn't serious. A scraped elbow, a bruised rib. But something inside Adrian broke open, not from the pain, but from the weight of trying to prove himself every step of the way. He sat there on the edge of the pier as Marley nudged his hand with quiet concern. Adrian whispered, "I don't know if I can keep doing this." But Marley didn't move, didn't whine, just stood beside him, waiting. That night, Adrian didn't post, didn't rehearse. He just rested. And when he woke the next morning, he didn't dance. He walked. One slow lap around the block, then another and another. Not to perform, not to prove, just to heal. It took weeks before he danced again. But when he did, something had changed. He stopped choreographing perfection. He embraced spontaneity. He let Marley lead more freely, and something beautiful happened. The missteps became part of the movement. The hesitations, they added honesty. The pauses, they taught patience. Adrian and Marley weren't flawless, but they were free. And that, Adrian realized, was the point all along. Not to dance perfectly, but to dance bravely. Not to lead, but to trust. Adrian never set out to inspire anyone. He wasn't chasing followers or fame. He just wanted to move again, to feel alive, but his movement moved others. A clip of Adrian and Marley gliding down a quiet street, no music, just footsteps and trust, went viral, then global. Millions watched, some paused, some cried. Some saw a kind of freedom they didn't know was possible. A young girl with retinitis pigmentosa in Brazil wrote, "Because of you, I joined dance class." A retired veteran with PTSD said, "Your rhythm calms something in me. I started walking again." Even a ballet school in Chicago reached out. They created a workshop called Dancing Without Sight and invited Adrian, not as a case study, as a co-teacher. Then came the TEDx talk, the interview on NPR, the invitation to choreograph a piece for the National Inclusive Arts Festival. But Adrian's favorite moment, it wasn't on stage, it was quieter. One afternoon, during a community class, a boy with autism, nonverbal, approached Marley. No words, just a hand. Marley stayed perfectly still, and the boy began to sway. Adrian stepped beside him, no cues, no rules, and followed his rhythm. For 5 full minutes they moved together, and when the boy's mother cried in the back row, Adrian walked over and said, "He led us all today." That's when he realized the gift Marley gave him wasn't just trust, it was permission to follow, to feel, to invite others in. Their dance wasn't just a performance, it was a doorway, and more people were stepping through than he ever imagined. After the world saw Adrian and Marley move, not just with grace but with soul, people began to speak about what they saw and what they felt. First came Dr. Lena Rourke, a neurologist who'd never believed in dance therapy for the blind, until she saw Adrian. She said, "I watched him and that dog move, and something shifted in my clinical brain. I realized mobility isn't just physical, it's emotional, spiritual." Adrian reminded me that connection happens first through trust, then rhythm. Then came Malik, a fellow dancer who lost partial vision after a car accident. He found something in Adrian's movement that no therapy had ever given him. He remembers, "I thought I'd never step back into a studio. I couldn't face the mirrors, but when I saw Adrian, there were no mirrors, just motion, just joy. He gave me back the beat." Ms. Janey, Adrian's former dance teacher, now in her 70s, saw more than technique in his return. Ms. Janey said, "I used to drill him on form, posture, the 8 count. But when he danced with Marley, he wasn't counting anymore. He was feeling. It was the most honest choreography I've ever witnessed." Finally, Lila, a young woman who'd just begun losing her sight due to a degenerative condition, sent a voice message that Adrian saved on his phone. Lila said, "I was scared I'd forget the light. That darkness would steal color, rhythm, everything. But then I saw you. You didn't chase the light. You created it, step by step. I'm not afraid anymore." In every reflection, one truth echoed: that Adrian didn't just teach a dog to dance, he gave others permission to move through the dark with beauty. The spotlight never stayed long on Adrian Banks. He wasn't chasing fame, he was following rhythm, following Marley. They still dance, not on stages, but in parks, on sidewalks, in hospital rooms and community centers, wherever someone needs to believe that beauty can exist beyond sight. He teaches now, not just steps, but stillness, not just technique, but trust. He shows that choreography can begin with a footstep or with a paw. The studio they built together, small, cozy, echoing with music and barks, now welcomes people with all abilities. No mirrors, no perfection, just space to move, to stumble, to soar. And Marley? Still by his side, older now, a little slower. But when the music starts, her tail wags, and Adrian reaches for her harness, not to be led, but to begin again. Because for Adrian, the dance was never about being seen. It was about feeling free. And the world? It didn't just watch, it moved with him. Some people think blindness is darkness, but Adrian Banks showed us something else. He showed us that light doesn't always come through the eyes. Sometimes it comes through movement, through connection, through the soft nudge of a dog who believes in you, even when you're not sure your next step. He taught us that being led isn't weakness. It's trust, it's grace, it's saying, I may not see the path, but I'm still moving forward. And in that movement, he found music, he found purpose, he found a way to teach the world how to feel before it even looks. So if Adrian's story moved you, if it reminded you that every challenge can hold unexpected joy, that vulnerability can lead to strength, and that love in any form can guide us home, then share this story. Tell someone who needs a little light, who might be afraid to dance, or trust, or begin again. Drop a comment. Have you ever been led by something or someone unexpected? Subscribe to Able in every way for more true feeling stories of people rewriting what's possible. Quiet strength, radical hope, and the dance we all do, just trying to be seen, known, and free. Because sometimes the most beautiful movements are the ones that begin in the dark,